Hi, this is Josh with SDM, and today we're going to be looking at creating a little game in Scratch. So Scratch is a free online coding editor. We can do drag and drop coding with Scratch, and you can either download the application, or in the browser you can go to scratch.mit.edu. Now, we're already signed in here. We have an account SDM Foundation, but if not, you can register for a free account. I think you can just use a username. You don't have to have an email, but you can create a free account. So once you're in Scratch, you can see there's other featured projects you can look at and explore, but we're going to start by creating our own. So we're going to go over to Create here in the top left. This creates a new project for me. Now, this is a blank new project. You can see the title of the project appears, Untitled 15. So we'll just call this New Scratch Project. Okay. All right, so there's a lot going on in Scratch. We start with our sprite 1, which is the Scratch cat here. All right, so a sprite is just a little 2D picture that we're going to be using to move around in our code world, or we can do all sorts of stuff with it. But a sprite is a little 2D asset that we can then apply code to make it do things. So we start with our sprite 1 Scratch cat here, and you can see it's up here with the green flag and the stop. This is our game screen in this square, and you can see that our Scratch cat is just starting right in the center here. Scratch uses a coordinate system, so we can see the X coordinate, we are in 0, and the Y coordinate, we are also in 0. So we're going to go positive in the Y direction to go up. You can see our Y changed to 114 when I moved him up. And if we go below the center point, we get a negative number. So negative Y is going to bring us down. And if we move to the right, we're going to get a positive X number. X is increasing. And if we move to the left of the center of the screen, we're going to get a negative X number. So 0, 0 in our coordinate system, we can type this in, 0, 0. That'll bring us right to the center here. 0, 0 is the center of our screen here. And then we also have a size and a direction. Direction is like rotation. Okay, I'm going to turn my size down just a little bit, make him a little bit smaller. And now I have my little Scratch cat in the center at a smaller size. So I'm going to call this sprite. I'm going to rename it to player. Okay, so we're going to just create a simple little game where you have a player and you move around and try to dodge obstacles that are bouncing around the screen. In order to add code in Scratch, we need to first select a sprite. So you can see here I have player selected, and you can see this blank white area here is where we're going to do our coding, and you can see a little ghost icon of the current sprite you have selected. So again, we apply code to a sprite. So in order to start in Scratch, we have this green flag. This starts our game. It's the go flag. So when we want to start programming, we want to go to events, and we're going to say when the green flag is clicked. So let's start by dragging that out. So just to show you how this works, so all the different categories of code blocks in Scratch are over here on the left, and you can see they're categorized into different color-coded sections that all control different aspects. Like, for instance, this is sound, this is looks, and this is motion, right? So we're going to start with motion. So again, any of these refers to the sprite that we are coding on. So if I say when the green flag is clicked, let's say change X by 10. Okay, so when I hit this green flag, you'll notice that the cat moved over to the right. I can keep clicking that. And that you can see the X as well is 70. If I click it again, it goes to 80, 90, and so on. So I'm going to set that back to 0. But you can see when I click this green flag, then it starts executing this next code block. All right, so this actually gives us a starting point that we can use to create some character movement. So in order to get rid of one of these blocks, you can drag it and pull it down to take it off, or you can drag it over to this sidebar here and let go to trash the block. So under control, we have loops. These are different types of loops that will repeatedly execute code. So we're going to start with a forever block. This means that when we have this green flag, this forever loop is going to continually run and sense any things that are inside it. We want a continuously running block because we want to be able to issue controls to the player using the arrow keys or the WASD key to move our player around. Okay, in this forever block, we're gonna check if, so in this forever block, this will execute over and over again as long as the project is still running. So let's put that motion in, and I'm gonna say change X by 10 again. Now you'll see when I hit the green flag, it'll keep moving to the right until we hit the boundary on the right. So that's fine, but that's not exactly helpful for controlling a player. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this block out of here. We'll just move that to the side for now. And we're gonna put in a control block. And we're gonna say if then. So this lets us do an if statement. An if statement will let us check if something is true, and if it is true, then we're going to execute what is ever inside this block. If it's not true, then we skip past this block onto the next. So I'm going to put this if inside the forever block, and then we're going to go down to sensing. So right here we have key pressed ? So this will tell if a key has been pressed. So let's drag this over into this little then block. And let's say if the right arrow is pressed, then we will change X by 10. This way, only when the right arrow is being pressed down, we will move to the right by changing our X position by 10. All right, let's try this out. So when I press the green flag, you can see this code is running here. It's highlighted. And we're not moving, but here if I press the arrow, you can see he starts moving. And when I release the arrow, he stops moving. All right, excellent. So I'm gonna move him back to the center here. So now, in order to get our full player controller, we can just keep repeating this pattern to sort of allow us to move in each different direction. So I'm going to go back again to control, and we're going to say another if-then block. And actually we have 4 directions, so I'm just going to drag them all out. So we're going to say if-then, if-then, if-then after this. Okay, so we've dealt with the right arrow. Now let's deal with the left arrow. So we're going to go back to sensing, and we're going to say another key pressed. Put that in there. And instead of space, we're going to drop that down to left arrow. And if our left arrow is pressed, we want to move to the left. So instead of changing X by 10, we are going to change X by -10. And it doesn't have to be 10 either. I'm just sort of using this as a generic starting point, but you can increase or decrease this number to either increase or decrease your speed. An increase in the number will amount to an increase in speed, and a decrease in this number will amount to a decrease in speed. So if we press our right key, we're going to move to the right by 10. And if we press our left key, we're going to move to the left by 10. So let's try that out. I'm going to hit play. And this is my right key. This is my left key. Yep, so we can move in both directions on the x-axis now. So now let's deal with our y-axis. So we're going to go back to sensing, and we're going to say if the up arrow key is pressed, then let's go back to motion, and let's see, change y by 10, yep. And let's go back to sensing. If the down arrow is pressed, then we want to change y by -10. And let's see how this works. So I'm moving right now, and the left arrow key, the up arrow key, and the down arrow key. Yep, and you can see I am moving around in all directions here. And I can even move diagonal by holding 2 keys at once. Okay, so we're off to a good start. We got our player moving around. So now we're going to have to add an obstacle, something that is also going to be moving around that we do not want to run into. So let's see if we can get that. All right, in order for us to have an obstacle, we need to create another sprite. So I'm going to zero out my position again. He's right in the middle of the screen. And I'm going to hit down here. It says choose a sprite. So let's click that. Now there's all sorts of sprites here that you can choose from. And I believe you can draw your own as well, but we're just going to use a pre-made one here. So let's see, what should we use as an obstacle? We're just going to use the basketball. All right, so now we've got this little basketball, okay? We want our basketball to move around the screen, and if it runs into our player, then the game is over. So the point is to try to move around and avoid this basketball. And then we can spawn multiple basketballs and decide how we want to treat this game. But let's get this moving around first. So you see if I click basketball, my sprite, little ghost sprite up here is the basketball. So any code that I drag here is now going to refer to the basketball. So again, if I go to events, we'll start when the green flag is clicked. And let's do a forever loop. And motion, we'll say change X by -10. And let's see, the basketball should move to the left of the screen. There we go. All right, now that's not very random, so we don't want it to just move back and forth. Although we could do that. We can have it bounce off the edge of the wall, and it'll just sort of ping pong back and forth. But let's try to do something a bit more interesting. Okay, there's actually a very simple way for us to do this. So they have this built-in glide 1 second to random position. So let's grab that. And you could have it go towards the player, you could have it go to a random position, or you could have it go to a mouse pointer. For now, we're just going to do random position. So let's see what this looks like. Okay, it's moving around, not bad. Okay, and you can see nothing will happen right now if we touch the ball. There's not really any... We haven't programmed for anything, so the ball will continue moving around and we can move around independently as well. Okay, let's make it so we also start at a random position. So we'll do when the green flag is clicked, we'll say go to a random position. That way it'll start in a random place every time as well. You see when I click the start flag, it starts from a random position. Okay. So now we want to make it so that if we run into this ball, the game stops. All right, so let's go back to our player sprite. And we're going to do another sensing here to see if it's touching something. So we're going to go to our control, and we're going to do another if-then, the bottom here. Let's go to sensing. Under sensing, we're going to grab this touching block here. It says touching mouse pointer. Let's instead say, so this will bring up a list of all the different sprites you have in your scene. So let's say if touching basketball, then, so let's go to control and say stop all. So this will stop the game. So if we hit the green flag, you can see we're moving around, but once we touch the basketball, the game stops. You can see this is no longer yellow, which means it's not running, and the green flag is clickable again. Yep, so we can try to dodge, but if we run into the basketball, the game stops. All right, so this is sort of a game in and of itself right now, but there's not really a way to tell how well we're doing. So why don't we now add a score counter and a high score, and maybe we can add some items to collect as well. All right, so let's add a score counter to our game so we can measure how well someone is doing. So we're going to go to variables, variables are a way for us to create a new variable. This is just something that can store a piece of data for us. So we're going to make a variable, and we're going to call this score. And when we start on the green flag, we're going to set our score to 0. Okay? And then in the forever loop, as long as we're not dying, we're just going to keep incrementing our score. So let's say, if after all these, we're going to say, change my score by 1. And let's see what this looks like. So when we hit the green flag and we move around, we can see our score is slowly counting up here. And when we stop, this is our final score because our game has ended here. All right, not bad. But let's say we want to keep track of our high score. So we can do, what we can do is we can make something called a cloud variable. Let's call this high score. Now, a cloud variable is stored outside of this game, so that once this game ends, it'll still keep track of what the current high score is. So once we get to this stop all, we're going to say if, let's add another if block in there. Let's move the stop block outside of the if block. And we are going to do an operator. We're going to compare. We're going to say, we're going to go to variables, and we're going to say if score is greater than the high score, then set high score to be the score. All right, let's try this out. So let's hit play, and once we hit the ball, now our high score is 85. So let's hit play again. And now you can see that our high score is still 85, but once we beat it, now our high score has been updated to 172. So we can play again, and yep, there we go. So now we're keeping track of a high score outside of just the score of the current game. Okay, let's also make this a little more challenging. We only have one ball to dodge, but let's add another couple obstacles to dodge. So we're going to click on the basketball sprite to bring up our code here. All right, and we want to do something called cloning this object. So I'm going to move off this forever block here, and I'm going to go into my control, and let's say a repeat block. Okay, so maybe 10 is a bit much. Let's do 3 times. So we're going to repeat something 3 times. And let's do this. We're going to say, repeat this 3 times, create a clone of myself. And then we're going to take this block here and go back to doing what we were doing before. Now, we're going to say, when I start as a clone, so this header here is going to control what happens to any of these basketballs that are spawned as a clone. So when we create a clone, this is the script here that the clones are going to follow. So we're going to grab this forever loop, and we can actually right click on it or control click on it and say duplicate, and then we'll move that right over here. Actually, let's put in a random position for those as well. So we're going to say go to random position there. All right, so let's see how this works. We're going to hit the green flag, and whoops, a little harder there. Hit the green flag, and you can see we now have 4 basketballs in our scene all moving around. So it's a little more challenging there now. All right, we're going to add one last feature that is kind of a different way that you can set this game up if you don't like the idea of a timer increasing the score. And that's going to be items to collect. So we're going to hit choose a sprite. We're going to decide on an item that we want our character to collect. So I don't know, let's look through here. Let's do our fortune cookie. I'm going to click that one. All right, so let's make it a little bit smaller. I'm going to make it 30. That's a little too small. Let's go with 50. Okay, not bad. All right. So for our fortune cookie, let's start again with our events and our when the green flag is clicked. Okay. Let's do a repeat again because we want to have multiple of these. Let's just say 4 for now. And then we're going to create a clone. So where is that? Right here. Create a clone of myself. And then, okay, after we clone, what do we want to do? We want a forever loop, and we just really want to tell if our player has touched the fortune cookie. So we're going to say show here too in the front, and I'll explain why that in just a moment. So the show and hide, we'll just turn the visual aspect of this off right here. We can turn that off and on. Okay, so we're in our forever loop. We want to sense, actually we're going to go to control and do an if statement. And we're going to say if we touch our player, then, all right, so we're going to introduce a new concept here, and that's broadcasting messages. All right, so let's go to events. And we're going to say, if we touch our player, we're going to broadcast a specific message. So let's say new message, and we'll say item collected. So this broadcast means that it sends out a signal that something has happened, and then other sprites in the scene can receive that signal and choose how to deal with it. So if we touch the player, we're going to broadcast out a signal that the item's been collected, and then we're going to hide ourselves. Okay, so let's see how that looks. All right, so let's try this out. It's actually only going to work with one. Okay, all the clones are in the same spot, so it doesn't really look like it's doing anything. So let's deal with what happens when we spawn as a clone. So we're going to say when I start as a clone, let's make them go to a random position. And then we're actually just going to copy this forever block here. So let's duplicate this and move it over to there. All right, excellent. So let's see how this works now. I'm going to hit the green flag. Oops. Okay, so we actually want to make sure that this hide block is inside of this broadcast. So let's move that inside on both of those. All right, so let's try that again. Okay, and when we run into one, it will disappear, but we have to actually deal with this item collected broadcast. So let's try that again. Let's run into them. Oops. For now, I'm actually going to make it easier, so I'm going to go to my basketball, and I'm going to say only repeat this once. Okay, there we go. Now I only have 2 basketballs, and I can collect my... Oops, there we go. Still lost, but I can now collect my fortune cookies. Okay, well, I can try to. There we go. And there, I collected all my cookies. So let's also create a variable for items collected. All right, let's say okay, and let's go to our player, and when we receive that broadcast, we're going to have to go to when I receive item collected, then we're going to go to variables, and we're going to change items collected by 1. So let's try this out. Yep, we got 1. Oops. 1, 2, 3. Yep. All right, excellent. That wasn't right, but so in here we actually have to make a couple changes to make sure this works right. I'm going to drag these out here. And just to make sure that we don't count too many times when we're running into something like that, we're going to say broadcast item collected and wait instead of just broadcast item collected. And then we'll also move our hide down to the end of that. Okay. Can get rid of those blocks. And we also, when our game stops, our items collected does not reset. So we should actually, let's go to our player and let's set our items collected as well. So let's go to variables and we'll say under here, set our items collected to 0 as well. So let's try this out. Go, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Excellent. Okay, and you can apply these. You can do the same thing with the high score for items collected. If you want to keep track of the high score of items collected, you can add more or less obstacles by going into basketball and changing the number of times to repeat cloning this, as well as you can change the number of collectible items by the number of repeat under cloning here. So this gives you some basic concepts to start, and you can improve on this or add some more features to this game. But this is the basics of Scratch and how to create a starter game here. In the future, we can improve on this or maybe start a different style of game and try some other different style of projects out in Scratch.